So today I'm going to be taking you guys through an ever in demand full day of eating as an 18-year-old bodybuilder on a cut, starting with meal one, which is a homemade animal-based pancake. Let's get into it. Okay, animal-based pancake. So we're looking at 2 eggs, 110 grams of banana, 30 grams of cream of rice, 75 grams of strawberry, and 17 grams of honey. So it's pretty simple, really. I wouldn't have this meal just every day. It's not especially high protein, but after a full week of eating 3 eggs and 3 strips of bacon every morning for breakfast, I was really looking forward to a little treat, and this still fits within my general diet. And as long as I can make my protein up elsewhere, which I was able to, I'm not really gonna sweat it. Plus, it's great. It's really tasty. I saw this recipe somewhere on Instagram, and I'm definitely a fan of the animal based diet, especially when you're cutting, making sure that you're getting in your saturated fat, keep up testosterone, and generally keep your hormones in check. It's super important when you're cutting because you want to ensure that your metabolism is doing well and that you are retaining as much muscle mass as possible. So, really, making this meal is quite simple. What I do is I just put 2 eggs in a bowl and whisk them until they're relatively homogeneous. Add in the 110 grams of banana and mash it into a paste. And then I just add the cream of rice, chop up some strawberry, and yeah, mix it all up. It forms something like a pancake batter, and surprisingly, it doesn't just taste like scrambled egg, which was a fear with me trying this recipe originally, but I can say totally honestly that it really doesn't taste like egg. It tastes like banana bread. So if you are not even cutting, just if you're into nutrition, making sure that you're eating a healthy diet, and you want to get a tasty but still reasonably well balanced breakfast, I would absolutely recommend this. It's probably better if you're bulking just because it's relatively high calorie, especially when it's compared to the amount of protein. But again, not going to sweat it because I get plenty of protein throughout the day from whole food sources. And I wanted to talk about my nutrition philosophy with this video, not just about the full day of eating, because how many of those have you seen? It's so uh, it's everywhere. So thought I'd do something a little bit different. As far as nutrition goes, I guess you could say relatively extreme. I'm not a big fan of the if it fits your macros system. I think that it's kind of a scourge within the fitness space right now because as fitness influencers, the goal should be to influence people to increase their level of fitness, to make themselves healthier, to lead a long and happy, healthy life. And I don't think that the if it fits your macro system is really a good way to do that, especially given the fact that you can eat literally anything. I agree that food restriction can become pathological in the extreme, but restricting yourself from ultra processed foods for most of the time is really a good way to go. So that's my main criteria with my diet. I really try to avoid ultra processed food. I almost never eat it, and when I'm cutting, I never eat ultra processed food. When I'm bulking and I'm really struggling to get my calories in, I'll consider it, but even then, I just try to push through. If I'm really full, I might indulge a little bit, but it's rare and it's controlled. So that's my policy with processed food. I think it has its place, but I think that that place is um, small and infrequent. So my diet, even when I'm bulking, is primarily composed of meat, specifically red meat, eggs, and fruit. Those are staples in my diet. When I'm bulking, I also emphasize dairy. I think especially raw dairy and raw honey. Raw dairy is incredibly beneficial for health. It's filled with good bacteria, super high in saturated fat, which, despite what many people will try to say, I believe is incredibly beneficial for health. Um, I mean, if you just look back through all of human evolution and even all of our history up until the last 50 or so years, saturated fat has been a staple, and as you've seen a decline in the amount of saturated fat people are eating, you do not see a decline in heart disease or an increase in general health. Actually, I'd say it's quite the opposite, as you see the increase in consumption of seed oils and polyunsaturated fatty acids. So I try my very best to prioritize saturated fat, or at least monounsaturated fatty acids like olive oil, hazelnut oil, that kind of thing. So yeah, coconut oil, beef tallow, butter, ghee. These are what I'm going to stick to the majority of the time, especially when it comes to cooking eggs and meat. It tastes a lot better. So, and it's better for you. So you can definitely indulge in butter. Do not be afraid of it. I try to have it as often as I can. It's a little bit harder on the cup, but I still try to include it. Yeah, so that explains this pancake and why it's not just a, you know, scoop of Kodiak cakes with some almond milk like you would usually see, which I don't necessarily believe is bad. Kodiak cakes is actually pretty good when it comes to gym bro food. It gets a lot worse than that. Um, it's also why you're not seeing me eating any protein bars during the day, because if I were, it would have to be something like Transparent Labs or Santa Cruz Medicinals, that kind of thing. And those are relatively expensive and not something that I can include every single day. So, yeah, this is pretty simple. Just fry it up in the pan, kind of like scrambled eggs, or, well, I guess an omelet. Don't scramble it, that'd be a pretty bizarre meal. So, just wait till you start to see brown around the edges and a little bit of the egg getting dry on the top, and that's when you can give it a flip and just give it a few seconds on the other side. It doesn't take long because it's pretty much cooked through by that point, and that's all you got to do. It comes together really well at the end. The texture is pretty good. Again, not too like eggs. It's definitely a little bit eggy, but I mean, best thing you can hope for with an animal based pancake, really, at least in my experience. And yeah, on to meal two. So we've got literally the simplest meal ever. It's just 8 ounces of beef and an ounce of cheese. I basically made the beef into three small patties, just roll it up into balls like meatballs, and salt it well. That's really the only seasoning I use with beef because it is so flavorful on its own. If I'm using turkey or chicken or fish, I'll usually season it pretty well, but with beef, all you've got to do is sprinkle some salt. Um, Pink Himalayan sea salt goes beautifully. So yeah, roll them into balls, and what I like to do is kind of make them like smash burgers, make them really, really thin so they cook through insanely quickly and they get crispy on both sides. That's the way that I like my burgers. If you don't want them like that, just don't make them as thin, or cook them on a little bit less of a high heat, and you won't get them quite as crispy. I still like to have them be, a little bit pink in the middle. You don't want a gray burger. It's not the most pleasant experience. Cooks super quickly again. It can be a little bit of a mess with the oil kind of spraying everywhere, but it's worth it. They taste absolutely amazing, especially if you're on prep. It's just such a treat. Same thing with the cheese. That's the best thing, I think, about having a relatively low carb diet. You can go pretty crazy with the fats. There's no need to eliminate everything that you enjoy when you're on prep. Uh, Most foods can be worked in pretty easily. Um, but yeah, that's all I have for meal two. This meal was also cooked in a relative rush because I was getting ready to go to the gym with a friend. I was heading to a gym that I'd never visited before. Um, and this honestly served as a pretty perfect pre workout meal. It's quite light, and I was already hungry, so I didn't feel it sit in my stomach. I notice when I focus more on animal based foods, I don't really get as sluggish or uncomfortably full. It's really rare that that'll happen. I don't know that it really happens at all when you're eating meat. It's hard to eat enough meat to get into that condition, and meat is also digested relatively easily. Our stomachs are evolved for it, so we have no issue with it. Um, so it went down great. The only thing that I would say that I do miss a little bit on this kind of diet is your pumps can suffer a little bit in the gym. Obviously, just you do not have as many carbs circulating. Your glycogen stores can be a little bit depleted, but as long as you're eating enough fats, it's not much of an issue. Meal was delicious. So here I am visiting the CSUN campus with my friend where I went to the gym. I only have a few clips from this day. Uh, I'll have more for the next video. But it was a pretty great workout. My first proper workout back after a while. I had some forearm and tricep issues, but there I am doing some curls and some rear delt flies. This was a full body workout because I was heading to the gym with a friend who had never lifted before. So we kind of just tackled pretty much every machine. And afterward, I had an off plan meal, which is something that I wanted to talk to you guys about anyway. So, when you're going off plan, which is fine, it's not something that you have to sweat as long as it's not too frequent. Um, there are still ways that you can work around to avoid just throwing yourself off track completely. Um, for example, so you saw the macros there. I went to In-N-Out, and their menu is pretty adaptable. You can get the protein style burgers, which is what I did. I got a protein style double double, which basically means two patties, two slices of cheese, and the protein style means it's just wrapped in lettuce instead of a bun. I got it with no sauce. So it was pretty high protein, pretty high fat, and extremely low carb. And it honestly didn't disrupt my day. It might have been a little bit higher sodium. It's not ideal because I'm pretty sure that the burgers are fried in, seed oils, but you make do, You have to still be able to enjoy your life to some degree during prep and not allow it to interfere with your day plan or whatever it is. You need to be adaptable. So I didn't sweat it, and I'm still on track. I was still in a pretty significant deficit, which brings me to meal 4, which was delicious, if I may say. It was really simple, just a few 100 grams of sweet potato and a couple of chicken patties. I like focusing my carbs more so around my workout in the peri-workout window, which just means pre-workout and post-workout. I didn't do that so much today, but it's something that I do nearly every other day. This was a relatively atypical full day of eating, but I still wanted to give you guys some insight into what that looks like, because even when you're going a little bit funky on your plan, it doesn't mean that you can't do a great job of sticking to, staying on track. So I still had an entirely whole food diet for the entire day. I still prioritized my fat intake specifically from animal-based sources: beef, eggs, cheese, And I was able to enjoy myself. Went to In-N-Out and got a burger, if you can call it that, with a friend. It was pretty great. Um, so yeah, the chicken patties, they're fried, but the ingredients are great. It's literally just chicken and spices. So that is, in addition to the fruit I'll show later, that's all I have for meal 4. So yeah. So yeah, back to what I was talking about with my diet philosophy. I originally did subscribe to If It Fits Your Macros for the first year or two of my training, but it really didn't serve me well, especially given the fact that it does not promote satiety or general health. I found it quite difficult to stay within my calories, and my body composition, energy levels, and mental clarity all suffered. So that's why I completely abandoned it and went for a holistically whole food diet, and I feel far better. It's allowed me to increase my gym performance. My size and leanness have improved simultaneously. Even I saw some pretty good recomp when I first started incorporating it, and yeah, I feel significantly better. I can perform better physically and mentally, and it's also allowed me to escape some of the more toxic sides of the fitness space. I believe that the way that fitness media is set up right now really promotes an unhealthy relationship with food and an unhealthy body image. Um, I think it's very easy to get caught up in, especially for young men and young women, a either a calorie restriction eating disorder or a cycle of eating disorders where you're really just going back and forth between uh, extreme restriction and then binge eating because of the bulking and cutting cycles, which I think obviously I bulk and cut, but you need to be very careful with the way that it goes, that you're not starving yourself and then force feeding the entire time. Um, and I think If It Fits Your Macros just makes that worse because it's if you're employing the use of If It Fits Your Macros while you're cutting, you're just going to be all over the place. You're going to be so hungry trying to do that. It's really not worth it. I also think that it is a diet that exists for lazy people, and it appeals to beginners because it's not unfamiliar. People who are just starting out in the gym, they hardly want to overhaul their lifestyle and their diet because that's unrealistic for most people, or at least they feel that way. So it's easier to just say, oh, I'm just going to eat whatever food I like in smaller quantities and make sure that I'm eating in a calorie deficit. And I think that there is an inherent issue with that because within fitness, the entire purpose should be to promote a healthier lifestyle. And weight loss for its own sake is necessary sometimes, but for most of the people who are doing this, young men who are whatever between 15 and 18% body fat who just want to get abs, that's ridiculous. They should be pursuing a healthier lifestyle. So I believe that if you're going to attempt to become leaner, improve your body composition, it should be in association with a lifestyle overhaul. Fitness is not a temporary pursuit. Health is not a temporary pursuit. It is a lifestyle. And you need to be prepared to accept all that that means. Now, you can indulge on occasion. It's normal. It's healthy. If you were to deprive yourself of all indulgences all of the time, you'd have a pretty miserable life. But when you are pursuing a goal, you have a mission in mind. You need to align yourself to that. You can't be half-hearted. You can't be haphazard. It should be intentional. Um, Real quick, this is just me preparing my final, I don't know if you can call it a meal of the day, which is just a small bowl of fruit, just to get some micronutrients and healthy sugars, healthy carbs before bed, as well as fiber. So, as I was saying, fitness is a lifestyle overhaul, and that makes the barrier to entry higher, but I don't think that that's inherently a bad thing, because my fitness journey just went to an entirely new level when I became aware of this and I started employing it. I started building muscle faster because I was fueling myself properly, and I'm finding it significantly easier to get lean now. Maybe this is just a process of trial and error, but I don't think that it is. I think that this is something that should be made obvious. So that wraps up our full day of eating. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I would really appreciate it if you can leave a like down below and subscribe if you made it this far. I will be bringing out new stuff as often as I can, which will be, hopefully, I'll get out a couple of videos by the end of this week. I'll catch you then.